Cashing in my pockets so my pennies should be. What they selling is cheap, so I'm buying that this freedom is free. I've been becoming me. See when Jesus taking the lead. With purpose I bleed and rise like going under the heat. Defeat is a never. You can't reattach with a sever. What's bringing you pleasure can tell you where you stacking your treasure. When storm is your weather, know that it gets worse for it's better.
Welcome to the Esau Macaulay podcast. I'm your host, Esau Macaulay. Today on the podcast, we have Jackie Hill Perry, who's a musician, a poet, an artist, a writer, and most importantly, what she says on her Instagram bio, a disciple. So she told me to call her a disciple. So normally we have this game that we can't play with you, Jackie. We used to play this game at the beginning of a podcast called Are You Washed? And the whole point is, do you know enough about the culture to talk about what we're going to talk about? But since we're talking about you, Jackie, I couldn't ask you, random Jackie facts. So what I tried to do, we're going to do with you what we did with Lecrae. And we did this thing called bar exam. And a bar exam is I'm going to read you one of your lyrics. And You're going to see if you can tell me, if you remember the song. And if you remember, what was going on in your mind, what you were trying to do with that song. So you have to be patient, Jackie, because I can't rap. And
you can't write.
I can't, but I'm saying is I can't say it the way that you say it. So when I read these lyrics, you might not recognize them because you're saying this guy's butchering it. But according to Genius, this is a Jackie Hill Perry song. You got it? You know what we're about to do? Yeah, okay. I'm about to read one of your lyrics. You're going to tell me what song it comes from. You got it?
I got you.
Okay. Man, I feel so nervous. I only get this nervous when I preach. Tell them life ain't yours. No, tell them life ain't ours. Don't waste time. Trying to find heaven and everything that's gonna die. Don't lie to them. Give them heaven. Give them evidence of heaven when you ride through them. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
We gotta tell them. I'll give you one more bar. We gotta tell them there's something better in heaven, embedded in everything that's ever seen, ever been, evident, excellent, and it's God.
Yeah, that's Art of Joy.
That's Art of Joy. Do you remember what song it is?
That's Art of Joy, ain't it?
No, that's the solution. That's the solution.
Oh yeah.
That's the solution.
It's like tell them it's better in heaven. It's evident better than everything. Like it's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't even say it. See, I'm glad you couldn't say it.
Yeah, because the cadence is actually really fast. Yeah, so that's the Art of Joy is when I was reading and studying Christian hedonism. So that whole album was coming out of me really reckoning with this idea that to love God and to explore God and to know God is to really find joy in him. That was like that was so good for my heart because I was coming out of a place of legalism where I didn't think that it was possible to find joy in God. So I made an album about it.
And so, this is really interesting because in some ways you're saying that your music is a snapshot of what you're going through in the moment.
Always.
And you read Christian hedonism. I can't even say it, hedonism. And you found that idea. So do you remember what was going on with the solution itself? Do you remember anything about that song? Because sometimes Lecrae is like, I remember where I was when I wrote it. It's okay if you don't. But if you don't, do you remember that song, The Solution?
The solution in particular, because wasn't Eshawn Burgundy on that song?
Eshawn Burgundy was on that song. Yeah.
That song in particular came out of, I think, a young guy named Jordan was murdered in Florida for having his music up too loud. Yeah. And I remember reading that article and it just was on my heart for so long. And so if you read about that story and you listen to those lyrics, it'll actually make more sense. Go ahead. It was just this bruh, it's like our hearts are wicked. It was like this frustration, like we are some really wicked people. And if we would just simply find joy in the Lord, maybe we would stop killing people. It was it was this sense of grief, lament, exhortation. I just want us to stop. Ultimately the solution to this problem is justice and also repentance and seeing Christ as better than everything. It was stuff.
This is one of the things that I really like about your content. or your writing, I don't want to call it just content, like your writing or your poetry, is that sometimes when you deal with issues, and I know this is in a couple of other songs, so it's going to be similar in the next song that we come to, is that sometimes when we're thinking about issues of justice, we might be tempted to think that the solution is to become less theological and more practical. And I'm not saying the protest and march isn't important, but it seems that what you're trying to do in that song is to say, in addition to those things, we need the thing itself, which is who Jesus is, which is what I thought the solution was trying to get at. So I'm going to let you know. You can also know, Jackie, these are my favorite Jackie Hill Perry songs. And so this is also the Esau McCaulley hit playlist. And so I cannot tell you how many times, I think this might have been the first time where, I don't know if you're a hip hop fan, when you make a face when somebody's rapping, and someone says something, the last part of this was, I couldn't even say it when I first made my face. Okay, this is the second one. This one it's both shorter, but it's also easier. I think that you might get it. It's only one line. She said she was tired. Do you remember this song?
Miss Fearless.
No. See, look at this. Lecrae failed in this too. I just think that our fans, we memorize
I know what they say it one more time.
Okay, she said she was tired. And then I'll give you, that's the first line of the song, actually.
That's going to make me mad because I know what that is.
I'll give you a bar that's later on. The prison system is lynching my babies. His bail is higher than what put him inside. It's crazy.
Oh, No Way's Tired.
No Way's Tired, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I know what that song is, bro. Yeah. No Way's Tired. Duh. It's in the dang old sentence.
Yeah, that's what I thought this would be easy. So in general, like when you perform, do you have to go back and like review your lyrics? Does this not just sit inside of you?
I don't perform.
Oh. So did you ever perform?
I might have performed maybe 5 times. I went on tour with Beautiful Eulogy and Propaganda at Eshawn once, and then I didn't feel like I was good at it, and so I stopped doing it. I just have a pride problem where if I'm not good at something quickly, I don't do it ever again. I'm working through that, and so I haven't performed in maybe 8 years.
So wait a minute. You used to travel and do poetry though, right?
Yeah, but I was good at it.
Okay. I mean, I've not seen you perform. I'm going to disagree that I've seen your poetry on YouTube. I've heard your music.
Performing poetry and performing rap are 2 different styles of performance. So performing poetry, you stand still at a mic. Your body, your voice are the only thing required to engage. Rap, I'm not finna jump around for nobody. You know what I'm saying? So I would have to find another way to make y'all feel like excited.
I was thinking of that. You see those Genuine memes when he's like, you remember, the artist Genuine? Mm-hmm. And like he's super old, but he's like still like, he's too old. He just sit down, right?
He got to stop.
It's time to stop. So I do think it's a time in general when you get older, the idea that the performance has to at some point be the music. I would say this, Jackie. The people want you back outside. I know you got, family and other stuff that you got to deal with. So I want my momentary intervention is to say, please come on the road. If you come to Chicago, and let me tell you something. Esau McCaulley is not outside of anybody's event after 10 o'clock. So I was going to say I will come, but I'm at this point in my life where like the question isn't who all going to be there. The question is when did this event end? And when does this event end and how far is it from my house? And since if you come and perform, you're probably going to do it in Chicago, and that's a 35-minute drive. I will say this. If you will perform, I will stay outside past my normal bedtime of 10:30.
Look at you.
So we're growing. We're going. Making promises. I'm just trying to help the people. Because when, so I don't want to talk about the interview with Lecrae. I tried to convince him to release like the whole version of a song that was an interlude on his album. So I'm always trying to do something for the people. And so, do you remember that song? No Way's Tired. Do you remember what was going on? That was on Crescendo.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think because again, this whole era that was around Black Lives Matter.
It was 2018.
Yeah, that was around. What was his name? Who got killed in St. Louis?
Philando Castile? Did I make that? Is that the wrong one?
Mike.
Mike Brown.
Yeah, that was around that whole time. So a lot of that music is what's on my heart, you know, and it was like No Way's Tired to me conveyed this idea of like we are tired. We are
Yeah.
grieving what is happening in our world and our country. And I just love that many of the old Black hymns are grief,
Yeah.
are lament. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
lament unto God. And so to have a Christian hip hop song, have a old lament hymn, just to
Yeah.
be able to like do that dance, I
Yeah.
thought would be kind of a
Yeah.
ode to, you know, our history.
So I don't think I don't know. I grew up in the Black church,
Hmm.
and that song "No Way Is Tired," they would actually sing that song in my church when I was a kid. And my
Mm.
grandfather owned a record store, and when I say a record store, we actually
You mean
sold
records.
records. And so he was a Baptist minister, and so I mean he used to like to make money. So when the kids were in, he played hip hop. But when the
Hmm.
old people would come into church, he would play gospel music. And so we would play it. I mean, I know all of those old gospel hymns. And when I heard that No Way's Tired, I was like, I knew exactly what you're up to. Okay.
Hmm.
So my
And
kids.
that's swoop
Yeah.
on those keys.
Oh. Oh my goodness. He knew the assignment. I need to get him on the
Oh,
podcast. I need to
yeah.
get him on the podcast and just like, cause I mean, so
It's in him.
this, yeah, the last one is You Should Know, because you wrote this one. I'm assuming relatively recently. It's from your recent album, and I'm just gonna say the chorus. I'm freer than I've ever been. You ain't never been to the hell I've been. I've been irrelevant. So
Yeah.
do you remember that song? I'm assuming that you do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Leave Me Alone.
Leave Me Alone.
Yeah, I mean,
My kids. I will tell you, my kids wanted to read a different lyric from "Leave Me Alone,"
Which
but
one?
I decided not to read that. Oh, my
Which
daughter, Turn the Other Cheek. My daughter, that's her favorite bar on the whole album, and I said, I'm not reading that lyric to Jackie Hill Perry. I said, I can't do that.
that was a little on the edge. But yeah,
But
I
my
mean,
daughter, just so you know, my daughter runs around this all the sayings. I'm just blessing enemies. She like that stuck in her head. She loves it, but she gets it though. She got the theology of it. So don't worry
it's
about it.
it's Sermon on the Mount.
Yes,
Yeah,
Sermon on the Mount.
yeah, because a lot of this album is coming out of the increase in influence I've had. But with that, the increase in criticism and slander and all the things. And so to say I'm freer than I ever been is also to come against the pushback that I'm not free.
Yeah.
You know, the pushback that I'm struggling in ways that I'm actually not. And so it's to say like, no, I actually am. I'm becoming more like Christ in ways that you just can never imagine. But if you knew me, you would know.
So, I mean, I try not to turn this into a praise session, thinking that Jackie's wonderful. But I will say, from afar, as someone who's watched what you've done over the last couple of years, it's actually encouraged my faith. Because one of the things that sometimes comes with being in public is that you can kind of get into strategy mode, where you're trying to manage. Not like as a person who's in the public, you're trying to manage public perception and you're trying to deal with criticism and be the kind of version of the faith that the internet wants to push you into. And I've seen you push against that. And I said, you know, Jackie can stand on business, I can stand on business. And so I want to say that like I have been like when I heard I'm freer than I ever been, and I said to myself, there was this sense in which the people who don't love me unless I become what they want me to be don't actually love me. They love what they want me to be. Yeah. And so now I could ask you this question. This might be completely off kilter. Were you at all thinking about like the Paul casting the demon out of that girl in that song? When you said, I'll start casting out these demons?
Nah.
Because you're talking about I'm preaching and you keep bothering me when cast out these demons, and Paul is preaching and they keep the girl keeps bothering Paul and then he casts out the demon. That could be me doing too much.
I didn't come up with that hook.
Okay.
So,
you didn't come with that hook.
Nah, Dre, one of the A&Rs at Reach, he just freestyled that hook. And I was like, hey, it works. I like it.
It works.
So let's keep it.
Okay. So is there a verse, and I know you have to have Christian humility and all of that other stuff, but I want to ask you this question. is there a verse that you've written, it could be on this album or some other album, where you said, this is the verse that I really, really love. I was in my bag when I wrote this. Is there a song or a verse that means a lot to you as a writer? Even if it wasn't like your most popular song. It could be also popular, but is there a song or a verse or a bar that you think like really you felt good about it when you wrote it?
Honestly, I think the practice was I was proud of, just because it was a stretch for me. Because I heard that beat and I was like, this is a strange beat, you
Yeah.
know? And the thing with that album is people will think this is hyper spiritual, but I actually think it's Christian. Is that a part of what stretches me is that I started to come to the conclusion that I really needed to pray for God to help my creativity,
Yeah.
because the Lord started to challenge me. It was like, why do you think you need to pray before sermons and not pray before you rap? Like, why do you
Oh,
think that you don't need my hand for that too? And
yeah.
so before I would write a 16, I started to ask God for help. Like,
Yeah.
can you help me be creative? Can you help me
Yeah.
write on this song? Can you help me with this beat?
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
did. He started to expand my cadences. He started
Yeah.
to help me write differently. And so practice was that. And so when I listened to that, my approach to it, so I don't even remember the lines right now, but it's just
Yeah.
like, it just was interesting. It's an
Yeah.
interesting flow. And I just
So
never rapped that way.
This is interesting that you said that. When I first came across you, I came across Jackie as the hip hop artist. I didn't know Jackie as the poet. So the first time I heard Jackie it was somewhere around you started popping up on features in my mind, and then your album came out, and that's kind of how I was introduced to you. But before that, you were a poet. And you got your start in poetry. Were you always artistic? Were you always just a writer? This is something that was in you that's manifested in two different genres? Or is the poetry music part kind of grew out of your conversion?
I was always a writer.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I knew that was a gift or something. It just, my
Yeah.
mama always used to say, if like I was an artist, so I can draw and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So the two classes I knew I would get an A in is English and art. I just
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I think it was when I became a Christian that those merged, where
Okay.
it was the creativity and the writings was somehow sanctified. And so
Yeah.
I was able to make words beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It just happened.
Yeah.
So when I guess a very succinct story is I was in class at this community college. I had just become a believer. I was probably a Christian for maybe 2 or 3 months. I had the most random urge to write a poem out of nowhere. So
Yeah.
I'm in class. I wrote a poem. I put it up on Facebook. My pastor saw it. He said, "Hey, can you do a poem for Easter service? You know how black pastors, your shine
Everything
is
like-
Easter service."
Yeah. Easter service. Yeah.
And so I did it at Easter service. Somebody was at the church that saw it. People started inviting me to their youth services and their youth
Yeah.
conferences to do poetry. From
Yeah.
there, I got connected to a church in LA. I did a poem at a church in LA. That is what started my public ministry.
Yeah.
And so it just
Yeah.
happened.
So people ask me the same thing. People ask me about my writing. I was writing on the side, and then I started writing for this group blog. I don't want to make the story too long. And then I had this article for this group blog that didn't really work for the group blog. And so I said, do you know anyone where I can put it? And a friend of mine named Tish Harrison Warren said, I have a connection with Christianity Today. So she hooked me up with Christianity Today. But after that, I never applied for any other writing job. The New York Times reached out to me. Sorry, before that, the Washington Post reached out to me and said, we've seen some of your writing. Would you be interested in writing for us? And I said, sure. And then the next thing you know, the New York Times reached out to me and said, we've seen you in the Washington Post. We've seen you in Christianity Today. Like, could you write for us? And I said, yes. And the only reason that I did it was because the thing that I wrote for that random blog didn't fit the culture of the blog. I needed something broader. And so when people ask me, how do you get in the New York Times? I was just like, start a personal blog. And if you dope, they will find you. And even as it relates to the book that some people know about me from Reading While Black, it's a book on black hermeneutics. Folks are not out in the streets buying hermeneutic books, right? That's just not something that often sells. I wasn't in my head thinking, how do you get a platform from writing? It was more, and like you said, I started writing, a lot of this stuff was 2016 to 2020. I saw these things happening in the culture, and I saw a lot of young Black people abandoning the faith and seeing a contradiction between a high view of Scripture and a concern for justice. And I wanted to say it's okay to love the Bible and to think that you shouldn't shoot Black people. I didn't think that was that theologically complicated. And so, so I wrote Reading My Black, and people were like, how did you do it? All that to say is, I think that a lot of us stumble into these things and have to like manage them. So was the transition from poetry to music, was it pretty seamless? Did you know you wanted to do music, or did that just come up too?
Yeah, that was, so I've always loved music. Even as a child, I love all music. I would sleep with music. I would sing. I would write songs, but I never, just like with poetry, I never thought I would travel and do poetry. That was just never a thing. I worked at Wendy's.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I
went to the
know.
record store.
Yeah, I didn't have vision for myself. You get what I'm saying? And so I just was like, I love the Lord. I'ma just be an evangelist at Wendy's. That's all I was on. And so when I was in LA, we had our pastor wanted to do a cipher with the poets, because we had a poetry team. And all the poets had a 16, like they had a rap. And all I had was a poem. And so all I could do was slow my poem down to try to make it sound like a rap. And I felt challenged. Like, how can they rap and I can't rap? And I wasn't jealous and I wasn't envious. I simply was like, if they can, I can too. So for the next 6 months, I just started writing raps, not to be a rapper, but just to challenge myself with it. And so I just started rapping, and I would do stuff online and all the type of stuff. And so we randomly connected with Shylin, because I think I did a rap somewhere. And he was like, I think the Lord wants you to rap. I was like, what?
Yeah.
He was like, I think the Lord wants you to do this. And I don't think, like, it was like I felt challenged by the Lord to do it. And I think that's the thing. I think it is one thing to feel like the Lord is burdening you and calling you into a platform versus you chasing one.
Yeah.
Everything I've done, I felt like the Lord has drawn me into it. I haven't chased it.
And that's what I mean when I say that I'm always worried when people say, I want to do what you do. How do I do it?
Run.
And I was like, no, like one of the hardest part for me, and I always want to make sure, like 90% of the people who I run into in the public are like who are Christians who are doing this stuff publicly. They're doing the best that they can. But there is this other element of it where I get uncomfortable. That we're not celebrities. We're fundamentally like people who worship God. So do you remember, maybe I ask you, do you remember your first feature? Do you remember who that was?
Yeah, it was, I had got connected with Odd Thomas. He reached out to me. Odd Thomas Thomas Terry, he was the owner of Humble Beats. He heard my poetry and he said, I think you can rap. I want to see if you'll feature on the song. I was like, okay. That's how Shylin heard me rap, actually.
Okay.
So Thomas flew me out to Portland, and he was like, I want you to feature on this song. I was like, oh, okay. So I went, it was really a rehearsal, technically, like an interview. So I went upstairs, I could write really fast. So I went upstairs, I wrote 16 in probably 30 minutes. Came downstairs, featured on the song, and they signed me. I had to talk to the person because we was engaged. They signed me that week.
Okay, so you engaged. Yeah, we skipped.
You know what I'm saying? So that was the first time.
Preston. We want everybody to know. Shout out to Preston.
I am married.
This is not the Preston and Jackie Park. Maybe we'll bring y'all back together to hear that part of the story. But I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your music. So now, for me, I am at this point a Jackie Hill Perry fan. If I'm following this story from afar, it's The Art of Joy. It's Crescendo. I think you seem to be one of, like, from my perspective, one of the more popular Christian artists out there doing rap. The lyrics are great. And all of a sudden, from my perspective, Jackie just disappears musically. Yeah. And the next thing you know, I see, which is great, Jackie, the books start to come out. And you're really successful as a writer. And then the next thing you know, in my perspective, I'm not on your Wikipedia page. I see the Perrys come out as the podcast show. And then I think there's a conference, like there's some conferences, like is it like holiness or something like that? Conferences
Glory.
that you did? Glory. There's the glory conferences. And so was that transition from music to writing, podcasting, and conferencing something that was intentional? And if so, is there a reason why you decided to step away from music for a while and focus? And did you tend to focus on the things that I noticed you doing?
Yeah, so my heartbeat has always been Bible teaching. Always. That's the thing that I think I was saved to do, to love the Lord, but to also equip his church for the work of ministry through the gift of teaching. And so I just started to pray and ask the Lord, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Like, you've gifted me to do a lot of things. And so I need you to tell me what you want me to do. And when I got married, I immediately became a mother, right? And so now I'm stewarding more things. Like when I was making music originally, I'm just a 21, 22-year-old girl with a husband. Like I ain't doing nothing like that.
Yeah.
Now I'm a wife. I'm a mother, I'm a rapper, I'm a poet, I'm a Bible teacher. I was working in Chicago at Grip Outreach for you. Well, technically. I'm doing too much. So I need to simplify my life.
Yeah.
And I felt like the Lord was like, you need to pick something and focus on that. And what do you think is the most fruitful thing you can do? That was the question.
Yeah.
What is the most fruitful thing you can do? And I was like, I think the most fruitful thing I can do is open up the Bible and teach it.
Yeah. I think
so
this
I
really
stopped
Yeah.
everything. I was like, that's what I'm going to do.
I think this is really interesting too, because a lot of people, when they see me because of the other stuff that I do, people see the public part of my life. Like they will see a Times article. They might even see some of the books that I do about race and justice. But my actual day-to-day life is I teach the Bible. So when I'm here at Wheaton College, we open up Galatians and we open up Philippians and we just walk through it. And in my class, we're old school Bible. We're just going to talk through the text. Yeah. And for me, that is something, I feel like I am most myself when I'm just explaining the text to people. Yeah. And I feel like, this might seem crazy, all of the other stuff that I do is really service to the church.
Yeah.
So I could step away from all of that public stuff and just teach the Bible in my little corner and be completely happy, but for whatever reason, God hasn't seemed to do that. And so was it hard then? Maybe I can put it this way. I don't know very many other people, maybe because you know a lot of poets. I don't know someone who's going from poetry to writing raps to writing good books. I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying that other rappers didn't write good books, because like I've read KB's book, much love. I've read Lecrae's book, so nobody come for me, internet. But was it hard for you to transition from? I feel like those are different skill sets. Was it hard to get your mind around book writing versus writing bars and poems?
It's a different medium for sure. That's why I think having editors is a godsend. Because I would say I think the biggest difference in poetry and book writing is that poetry teaches you and trains you to say a lot in a little. You know, with a poem, your sentences are dense on purpose, right? You're supposed to say the most in 3 minutes. And so I remember my first draft was 19,000 words. And my editor was like, we need like 30,000 more.
You're about to say 19,000 to go get it done.
Yeah, we need 30,000 more. And I was like, well, I need your help. Like, you have to draw it out for me. And so that was really the biggest hump, was how can you help me to draw my mind out? But also, I think I learned that you don't have a lot to say when you don't have enough to say.
Okay.
So, of course, you only have 19,000 words because you're 24.
Yeah.
You
so you need to live a little bit.
Yeah, you need to live a little bit. You need to read more books. You need to have more conversations. You need to live in community. And so it's humbling. You're not that smart.
So is that why you went to seminary? Because you go to seminary at some point in this, right?
I started seminary a couple of years ago. I went to seminary because I felt like there was a cap to my knowledge. Now at this point, I'm kind of asking the Lord, like, I don't know what you want me to do, but because it's overwhelming. It's just with 4 kids, I just don't know
Yeah.
how to. I don't know how to do
Yeah.
that and raise
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, I can understand that. So what then if the writing is a part of it? I can understand this. The conferences were an attempt to once again take some of that stuff public and give it to the world. How might the podcast fit in that? You see that as part of your teaching ministry too? Is it like because I know you
Well, the
have different types of people. Yeah.
conferences,
Yeah.
the conferences were. I was getting frustrated with teaching in contexts that don't honor the culture I come from.
Okay.
And so I wanted to be able to teach, open up, go verse by verse,
Yeah.
but worship with Black music. Like it's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
I want us to have space to
Yeah.
linger and tarry and not
Yeah.
feel like we're on a time limit. I want
Yeah.
it, you know, like to sit like I hate this. I just want like I just feel like we quench the spirit so much
Yeah.
in the name of or like I get it. Order
Yeah.
is
Order
a
is
thing,
important.
but
Yeah.
sometimes you can leave room
Yeah.
to just wait on them. So anyway,
If,
that's what glory was.
it felt like the glory conferences in particular. Once again, I'm sitting on the sideline, so if I misinterpret this, they do feel like a protest. Like we just gonna sing and do Bible. I felt like there was a very
Yeah.
clear. This is not a bells and whistles. I'm gonna have
was very
85
simple.
of the most famous pastors in the world. We gonna sing and do the Bible.
That's
And
it.
God seemed to bless it. It seemed like there was a lot, you matched the hunger that was going on in the culture.
He did honor it, and there were so many things that I've learned since that I would change, but he honored it. But I think that's what that was. As it relates to the podcast, that was really Preston's heart.
Yeah.
We started the podcast around 2018. So we started podcasting before podcasting, I think, blew up. Like we
Okay.
started doing it in our closet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was before people was doing clips. That was before
Yeah.
reels existed.
Yeah.
All the things. And so it has seemed to serve and bless the church in ways that we have not expected. I think at this point we've reached 17 million downloads,
Yeah.
which is kind of scary to
Yeah.
think about. But
So I get more questions about the podcast that I did on the Perry's than any other podcast. Is y'all in the Bible Project?
that's crazy to me.
So people,
Yeah, the reach
people
is
do.
wild.
Yeah. So was 242 then? I don't want too much of your stuff, but you did another conference recently it was the 242 conference. Was that just a continuation, or is it something different?
That was different. So me and Megan Ashley, my friend, we connected last year. It began as a discipleship relationship and just kind of butted into a friendship discipleship relationship. And we just had this heart for the church. Megan came out of kind of like the secular industry to a certain degree. And so we felt like there was this need for returning back to the basics of the faith. And us both being a part of 2819 Church led by Philip Anthony Mitchell, we just saw like, man, like we want to bring sound, solid teaching to this community that the Lord has given us to influence, and we wanted to introduce this community to teachers that we trust. So Dr. Sarita Lyons, Dr. Eric Mason, Philip, Preston, all the things. And so Acts 2:42 was really just this bringing together of souls underneath solid teaching. And so did we know it would be 7,000 people? No, but that's what happened. And you know, me having been a part of stuff like TGC, to see this community of all these Black faces worshiping under solid teaching is crazy to me. And it was just beautiful.
Yeah. So now Jackie steps away from music. You're spectacularly successful. Your books are bestsellers. You have conferences that are selling out. You have 7,000
and it was white people at Acts 242. I have to say that too. It was white people.
Multicultural. Yeah. We love everybody. So don't email us. We love everybody. And so you didn't have to do any music anymore. And you come back to music with a probably bigger profile than when you left. And so maybe it might be weird to ask you, why did you come back? You don't, I mean, you're not eating you don't need rap to eat. So what was it that led you to come back to do this now?
So I was at my previous church. I was working in children's ministry, and I had ran into Ace. Ace is an A&R at Reach, and he was working at children's ministry, and we connected over a single that I was a part of. And the connection
is that Wande? Did she change her name though? Didn't she?
Yeah, Anike.
Anike.
I don't remember the song, but it was a single I was a part of. And the connection felt divine. I just got this weird feeling. So I prayed. I was like, Lord, I don't know what this is. I was driving. I was like, Lord, I don't know what this is about. I was like, but if I'm supposed to do music with Reach, bring it about.
Oh, so wait, you minding your own business. I need to go to a church where they have the Reach A&R, because maybe I'm supposed to rap. Because the people who do children's ministry at our church, that's my wife.
Which I love.
Yeah, which is great. It's great. Now I'm gonna say it. So, but before that, was there any sense of like you had missed rap, or was it just that meeting?
I missed it. I cried about it. I thought I would never do music again. So even a couple of years ago, I cried to Preston in our kitchen. I was like, I miss doing music, but I feel like it felt like something I laid on the altar that I just had to wait for God to release me to do again. And he brought it back.
See, that's what I was talking about when people said, why did you come back now? People who listen to podcasts might know that I'm planning a church out here. And I had all of this other stuff going on in my life, but I actually just missed preaching in a local church. And it was one of the things that I had laid down because I felt like God wanted me to do this other stuff. And I was complaining to God and my wife for years that he would make a way for me to be able to get back at the church ministry. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. So that feeling was there, and then that meeting is a confirmation.
It originally, if it just was like, let me pray. So again, it wasn't, I want to do music.
Yeah.
Because I've always had access to Lecrae.
Yeah.
I knew of Ace. Like I could have hit them up. I always knew KB. Yeah, I could have.
Yeah.
But it's just like, that's selfish ambition.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And so it's just like, I don't want to do things from the flesh. God ain't gonna bless that. Yeah. And so I was always kind of just surrender. I just want to surrender all of that to the Lord. And so when I asked him and surrendered that to him, I sensed like, I think this is you. I think you're drawing me into this. And so when I talked to Preston about it, and I had a meeting with Reach, and what I sensed God saying is, this is another avenue of influence. So it's not necessarily just music for the sake of music. This is an avenue by which I want glory, because music takes up more space than Bible for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is another way of influencing people's minds and consciences in the direction of Christ. And so that's how I'm looking at it, is this is just another way to help people think on what is good. That's it.
You were talking about like you didn't want to have it be selfish ambition. And one of the things that I want to maybe hear you talk about, we'll be done in a few minutes, is that once you have a platform as a Christian, that you have access to a lot of stuff. And so, like you said, you could have started rapping whenever you wanted to start rapping. Like, how do you deal with, like, I guess the temptations and the opportunities and staying focused as a public Christian who's also trying to be an ordinary Christian who honors God in their kind of discernment? How are you managing that?
I think it all comes down to conviction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think how you move publicly has to come out of who you are privately.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I remember talking to my pastor about this, because he was talking about humility. And he was like, how do you stay humble when you have 1.5 million followers?
Yeah.
And I was like, I think people think that, I was like, you stay humble by, it's like I have to submit to my husband. I have to honor my mother.
Yeah.
I have to, when the person cuts me off in the gas station, I have to,
Yeah.
love my neighbor. It's the everyday humility that then pours over into the big humility. And
Yeah.
so I think that's the stuff. It's like if you expect not to have selfish ambition with the big stuff, when you have selfish ambition with the little stuff, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think it's stewarding the small convictions that prepares us to steward the big convictions.
Is it hard to be, one of the things that I've noticed is that once you get to a certain place as a Christian, you become like content to other people. In other words, like, as you're trying to live out your faith, like your every word, your every decision is rarely interpreted with a hermeneutic of charity. Oh, like Jackie might have said this way, but she probably meant, like, there's not an imagination that assumes the best of you. There's often responses that are assuming the worst of you. Like, how have you managed kind of the public criticism part of just living out for Jesus in public? Because it's one thing to be humble, but how you with the fact that people who are trying to humble you via a distance is probably the best way I might want to put it.
It's so many thoughts. I think some of it is the times. I think we're in the last days.
Yeah.
So in the last days, love will wax cold.
Yeah.
There's a lack of reasonableness,
A lack of reasonableness is an accurate description of what's the entire internet.
We don't talk about that word enough. People are unreasonable.
Yeah.
So I think some of it is I feel responsible to help people. Like even in this season for 2025, I was like, what is it that I want to pour into people?
Yeah.
And I was like, I think we need to just go back to the basics of what is love.
Yeah.
What is love? Like what is love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not easily angered. Love hopes the best, like those types of things.
Yeah.
So I think like some of how you fix the problem of the culture is doing due diligence to cultivate disciples locally and publicly as best you can. And those who have an ear will hear. I think for my own heart, it's also accepting the fact that some of this is opposition.
Yeah.
I fight not against flesh and blood. So last year, people was ripping me to shreds. They was ripping me. The slander was intense. Some of it is opposition, and yet at the same time, some of it was God's mercy. Because the Lord is like, if I let everybody praise you, you can't possibly think that would be good for you.
Yeah.
That would not be good for you.
Yeah.
And so you need to receive that because you actually are following in the footsteps of Christ.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus was persecuted. Are you crazy?
I used to think that, man, I used to have this idea like, oh, y'all are misunderstanding me, and that's the reason why you mad. And then I was like, no, actually, you might understand me. In other words, you might perfectly understand me, but the actual gospel that I believe is itself offensive to people.
Yeah.
And so I used to think that, oh, if you could manage to have people understand the exact point that I'm making, but even if I separate myself from all the versions of Christianity that you don't like and all of the misunderstanding and this, that, and the other, at a certain point, I feel like it's the thing itself that people got to deal with. Now I'm going to ask you this. You talked a little bit about discipleship, but then we're going to let you go. You're saying that you are discipling people musically through practice. And you talked a little bit about what God was showing you through that album. What do you hope that the listener gets from that album?
That album was more vibes than anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it just was fun. Like, because this generation, when you think of cross movement, the truth, ambassador, that was more theological. Like, my music is theological if you listen, but it was more theology forward.
Yeah.
Music nowadays, like Gunna, Lil Baby, Future, it's just vibes.
It's all vibes. Yeah, it's all vibes. Yeah.
And so practice is vibes. It's like music you can put on that just doesn't wound your conscience. You know what I'm saying? You want to work out to it. You want to vibe to it. You want to play it for your friends that might be in the world and they don't understand why they just, they feel good. They don't feel depressed. They don't have anxiety, all the things. My next album, because that was an EP, this next album, I am going into it praying about how how God wants me to approach it. If he wants me to be a little more, it's not that I wasn't intentional, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
if he wants me to approach it like I approach my books.
Yeah. So I will say, this is funny. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with people who wrote the song. But if you think that Psalm 88 and like the blood that and some of those things are vibes, like you can't help it, Jackie. The theology's in you. I know what you mean. Yeah. The beat and the energy of it.
Those I can't help that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is. The beat and the energy is vibey, but I hate to tell you that you were barred up the whole album. So it ain't the same as these cats who are singing like 8 to 10 bars over and over again. But I know what you meant. And I'm going to let you live and say that practice was vibes, but it completely wasn't. I don't know anybody who has a vibe album that ends on like the blood or like Pick It Up, where literally, I'm sorry, this is going to the cookie for a second. Pick it up, like tells you to pick the Bible up and read it. But you're right, it's all vibes.
I get it. The beats.
So,
the beat. If you strip the beat away, it's definitely sermons.
So thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And we look forward. I mean, I'm not allowed to break any news. How far are we from the full EP? I mean the full album. How far are we?
We are trying to solidify beats.
Okay.
So
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, we're just gathering sounds.
Oh, gathering sounds. Okay, then. So it'll be a minute. So, Jackie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We had a good time here. I was going to close with one question, but I don't think I should ask that one about your 4 favorite musicians you listen to now, because folks get mad if they don't get chosen. But maybe we'll have you drop that in the comments later. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and we'll talk to y'all later. The Esau McCauley Podcast is a production of Holy Post Media, produced by Mike Stay Low, Stray Low. If you know, now you know. Edited by Seth Gorvette, like a Corvette. Music by Rob Noor. Make sure to follow the show wherever you get your podcast and leave a review so more people can find it. See you next time. I'm out.
I'm penning these letters with prayers they can aid your endeavors. It's clever benevolence, tasted it, wrestle with, still wrestling. Touch my side and it crushed my pride and told me I'm blessed within. Receive a Christian platitude with gratitude, but in the saddest news I live in doesn't add up to the Beatitudes. Catch me in the catacombs, chiefing like they Pat Mahomes, catching bullets, tackle foes, running plays, defending zones. Field got them doing football numbers, only average grown. He was acting grown.